1. Belle Gunness. Belle Gunness operated as a serial killer in Indiana, USA in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. He was born in Norway in 1859 and immigrated to the United States in 1881. Little is known about Gunness' life, but he is thought to have killed at least 40 people. Among those killed by Gunness are their husbands, fiancés, and children. Many would target wealthy and lonely men, trying to persuade them to give up their possessions and then kill them. Belle Gunness killed people in different ways. He poisoned some of his victims, used a sledgehammer or cutting tools to kill some, and strangled others to death. Once, after marrying a particularly wealthy man, she poisoned and killed his entire family, including the man's children. His activities are characterized as very brutal and frightening, as Gunness does not show any pity or remorse for killing people and is constantly looking for new victims to maintain his life. Gunness is believed to have buried the corpses of the people he killed in his garden and destroyed some of them by burning. The discovery of the bodies killed by Belle Gunness took place during a fire on April 28, 1908. Gunness' house burned down, and after the fire was put out, the police were notified by his neighbors, who were suspicious of him displaying some odd behavior in his garden. During the excavations in the garden, the remains of many people were discovered. In total, 11 bodies were found in Gunness' yard. Among them were the remains of women, men, and children. Some of the bodies were mutilated and burned. There was no DNA analysis at the time, so the identities of the bodies were tried to be determined based on teeth and other physical features. The exact number of all victims Belle Gunness killed is not known, but some sources claim she killed at least 40 people. Some even suggest that the number of victims Gunness killed was over 100. Belle Gunness' activities caused a huge scandal at the time and went down in history as one of the most famous serial killers in the USA. Belle Gunness disappeared after bodies were discovered during a fire at her home on April 28, 1908. Some thought he too died in the fire, but later evidence showed that Gunness had escaped before the fire. A farmer working for Gunness claimed to have seen him leave the house during the fire and get into a car and drive away. Also, in searches after the fire was extinguished, Gunness' body was nowhere to be found. Some speculate that his death may have been a hoax, as well as evidence that Gunness had escaped. According to some theories, Gunness was terminally ill and, using the fire as a guile, faked his death and then escaped under a new identity. However, exactly when, where, and how Belle Gunness died remains unclear. Some believe he survived and committed other murders elsewhere, but none of these theories have been conclusively proven. 2. Katherine Knight. Katherine Knight is a woman who was born on October 24, 1955 in Tenterfield, Australia. She is known as one of the most violent female serial killers in history. Knight experienced domestic violence and abuse as a child. He also exhibited violent and controlling behaviors in his relationship with his first wife. His relationship with his second wife, John Charles Thomas Price, was also quite problematic and he eventually killed her. Katherine Knight is accused of murdering her second husband, John Charles Thomas Price, on March 1, 2000. The incident took place at Price's home. Knight first stabbed Price while he was asleep and then began dismembering his body. It was also alleged that he tried to eat some parts of the body. Price's head was found above Knight's door. Police found many traces of blood and knives, as well as the body in the house. Knight had committed violent acts many times before. He had been violent and controlling in his relationship with his first wife. His relationship with Price was also running problematic. Knight had used violence and made threats against Price many times. Knight's actions can also be seen as a sign of psychological discomfort. Knight was arrested on murder charges and his trial was among the most violent in Australian history. The jury ruled that Knight had committed murder and was found guilty. Knight is serving a life sentence and is serving his sentence in New South Wales Silverwater Correctional Centre. Katherine Knight has gone down in history as a woman accused of killing men specifically, and her murders have a chilling reputation, especially for the way corpses are handled. 3. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos was a woman known as a serial killer in the United States. He was born on February 29, 1956 in Michigan and was executed on October 9, 2002 in Florida. Wuornos' childhood was quite difficult. His father was in prison while his mother was pregnant, and his father committed suicide when he was 4 years old. Her mother later became an alcohol addict and a sex worker. When he was 11 years old, Wuornos' mother abandoned him and his siblings. Wuornos ran away from home at the age of 13 and then started making a living as a sex worker. During this period, he became addicted to drugs and alcohol. In 1976, at the age of 20, Wuornos married a wealthy 69-year-old man, but they separated soon after. Aileen Wuornos often stopped and then killed her victims while traveling by car. He committed his murders with a gun. Before committing the murders, Wuornos stole his victims' property and in some cases also stolen their vehicles. His first victim was a man named Richard Mallory in 1989. Wuornos killed him at a business he had hired and then stole his property. Then in 1990, he killed 2 men, David Spears and Charles Carskaddon. In 1991, he killed a man named Peter Seams and stole his car. Aileen Wuornos committed her subsequent murders in 1991. He killed a man named Troy Burress and then Walter Gino killed a man named Antonio. His last victim was a man named Bruce, brother of Richard Mallory, whom he shot shortly before his last murder. Wuornos committed all his murders with a gun and stole his victims' property. He was caught in 1991 and found guilty of the murders. He made statements such as, "Kill me," in various interviews and letters. Wuornos stated that if he stays in prison, he will have a hard time surviving and he does not want to live. In 2002, Wuornos was executed in prison. Some argue that the poor conditions of her childhood and the trauma of being raped caused her to become a murderer.
But you're okay now.
I'm okay. I'm okay. God is going to be there. Jesus Christ is going to be there. All the angels and everything. And, you know, whatever's on the beyond. I think it's going to be more like Star Trek, beaming me up into a space vehicle, man. Then I move on, recolonize to another planet or whatever. But it's whatever's the beyond. I know it's going to be good because I didn't do anything as wrong as they said. I did the right thing. And I saved a lot of people's butts from getting hurt and raped and killed too.
So are you saying that you killed in self-defense or in cold blood? What do you, because you've changed your story. I'm just trying to
What are you talking about? Change story on what?
No, about whether it was self-defense or not.
I'm not going to say it, I'm not going to get in depth about my cases, Nick. I'm on my way to the chamber, nothing stopping it. You can believe it or you don't have to believe it. That's up to you, man. Put a big question mark on your film.
What more is there to say about the cops? What more do you want to say about the cops?
A lot of stuff. Did you know that they were surveilling me before I killed? And then I knew it? And that it was covered up? Did you know there was helicopters dropping down from the sky, deputy sheriff, with decoys picking me up 4 or 5 months before my arrest? It was covered up?
But nonetheless,
nobody ever asked me these questions.
Whether the cops were following you or not, Eileen.
Oh, whether the cops are following me or not, Eileen,
okay,
what?
let's say the cops were following you.
Yeah.
Let's say they were following you and they did everything that you're saying they did.
Uh-huh.
Nonetheless, you killed 7 men.
Yes, you did.
And I'm asking you, what got you to kill the 7 men?
And I'm telling you, because the cops let me keep killing them, Nick. Don't you get it?
Not everybody is killing 7 people. So there must have been something in you that was getting you to do that.
Oh, you are lost, Nick.
So
I was a hitchhiking hooker.
Right.
Running into trouble, I shoot the guy if I ran into trouble. Physical trouble. The cops knew it. When the physical trouble came along, let her clean the streets, and then we'll pull her in.
But
That's
how come
why.
there was so much physical trouble because it was all in 1 year? 7 people in 1 year.
Oh well. Oh well.
But why not say now?
Because I'm out of retaliation for taking my life like this and getting rich off it all these years in total pathological lying. Yeah, thanks a lot. I lost my fucking life because of it. Couldn't even get a fair trial. Couldn't even get a fair investigation or nothing. Couldn't even have my appeals right. You sabotaged my ass, society, and the cops, and the system. A raped woman got executed. It was used for books and movies and shit. Ladder climbs, the re-election, everything else. I got a big finger in all your faces. Thanks a lot. You're an inhumane bunch of fucking living bastards and bitches, and you're gonna get your asses nuked in the end. And pretty soon it's coming. 2019, a rock's supposed to hit you anyhow. You're all gonna get nuked. You don't take fucking human life like this and just sabotage and rip it apart like Jesus on the cross and say thanks a lot for all the fucking money I made off of you. And not care about a human being and the truth being told. Now I know what Jesus was going through. They've been trying to tell the truth, and I keep getting it stepped on. Concerned about if I was raped, I'm not giving you book and movie info. I'm giving you info for investigations and stuff, and that's it. We're gonna have to cut this interview, Nick. I'm not going to go into any more detail. I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass. Okay, let's go.
It was really pretty incredible that Eileen had just sailed through the psychiatric test the day before. It makes you wonder what you'd have to do to fail.
(4) Elizabeth Bathory. She is a Hungarian noblewoman who lived in the 16th century. It went down in history with allegations that more than 650 young girls were tortured to death and their blood was used to preserve Bathory's beauty. However, it is debatable how much of these claims are true. Bathory was born on August 7, 1560, in Esztergom, Hungary. He grew up in a wealthy family and learned many languages throughout his childhood. He married Ferenc Nádasdy in 1575. Thanks to this marriage, he acquired the lands of Nádasdy and settled in Szeged Castle in Ungvar, in what is now Ukraine. Because of Nádasdy's participation in the war, Bathory was required to stay at home and take care of the maids along with the servants. He claims that Bathory drank the blood of young girls by burning them in stoves or cutting off their arms to keep warm. However, there is no conclusive evidence about the veracity of these claims. The details of Bathory's alleged crimes are also unclear. The allegations include starving young girls, leaving them naked, cutting their bodies, poking holes, pouring salt on their wounds, and many other torture methods. It is said that he tortured and killed young girls with his servants and smeared their blood on his face. Some sources suggest that these claims are unfounded and fabricated by Bathory's enemies. Bathory was found guilty in 1610 and sentenced to house arrest. He spent the rest of his life in the castle and died on August 21, 1614. There is no definite information about the cause of death. Some sources state the cause of death as natural causes, while some claim that he committed suicide. Today, there is no conclusive evidence that Elizabeth Bathory actually bathed in blood. However, these stories have been in popular culture for years, and Bathory is depicted as a blood witch in legends. 5. Delphine LaLaurie. Delphine LaLaurie is a 19th-century New Orleans woman. The daughter of a wealthy family, LaLaurie is known for her brutal treatment of slaves, despite her high social status. Legend has it that LaLaurie tortured her slaves to death and removed some of their body parts. LaLaurie was married 3 times in the early 19th century, and her last marriage was to physician Leonard Louis Nicholas LaLaurie in 1825. The LaLaurie couple bought and lived in a mansion in the French Quarter at 114 Royal Street. LaLaurie's tortures of slaves came to light after a fire. On April 10, 1834, a fire broke out in a room in the LaLaurie mansion, and when firefighters arrived to put out the fire, they broke through the door of the room. In the room, they found several slaves chained and tortured. Some sources claim that LaLaurie inflicted extremely brutal and horrific tortures on her slaves, such as burning them in frying pans, skinning them, breaking their heads with a hammer, and gouging out their eyes. Some rumors have it that LaLaurie tortured her slaves by tying them up in chains and starving them, some of whom died and their bodies were buried in the garden. It is thought that a female slave, who is thought to be the cause of the fire, spread the fire while trying to get rid of the chains and the fire started. After the fire, LaLaurie's mansion was searched and more tortured slaves were found. LaLaurie and her husband fled the scene and could not be reached afterward. Later, rumors surfaced that LaLaurie died in Paris, but the exact date of death is unknown. There is no exact information about the number of slaves that Delphine LaLaurie tortured and killed. However, many of the slave owners in New Orleans are known to have committed similar crimes, and stories about LaLaurie have become a popular topic among local legends.